Welcome to episode 2 of my new line and wash series where the motto is no perfection, just play. Today we're going to talk about the equipment that you need to start your journey in line and wash art. So the simplest way to start with line and wash work is to use a fountain pen, a brush and a little bit of water. Now, using water soluble inks is great because you can sketch in and then go over the top with the brush and the water and push all that ink around, create shadows and values and tone, and then at the end you can go back in with the ink, back in with the fountain pen, and sort of firm things up a little bit. And that's a really nice way of working. And I've got some tutorials of that. Now the next stage up is actually something that I would call minimal colouring or selective colouring, and that's literally a sketch like this where you can see what I've done is I've gone in and I've used a fountain pen to create a really simple silhouette. I've actually masked off with masking tape there and put a single layer of ink in as a sky, and it's very, very minimal, and you do not have to do loads of tones, you don't have to do loads of really complicated sketching. You can do something as simple as that. But really what I'm trying to show you here is that you do not, line and wash is not about loads of fancy painting. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. So traditional line and wash technique would normally involve using probably a pencil or just a pen. Now you could go with a fine liner or a fountain pen, but if you're going to be using watercolor, the important thing is you want to use a waterproof ink. Now the reason why is because if you don't, when you apply water in watercolor, it pushes it all around and makes a bit of a mess and it's a bit uncontrollable. So we have fountain pen with watercolor inking or fine liners. Now assuming the fine liner is waterproof, which most of them are I think. Now watercolor sets are available reasonably cheap. I wouldn't necessarily go and spend a lot of money on really expensive stuff. There's some really good Winsor & Newton Cotman sets, or sort of Derwent manufacturers like that. Their student sets are pretty good. I wouldn't go for loads of colours, I would keep it quite simple. Go for sort of 14, 12, maybe 16 colours, no more. You don't need them. So really, that's all you need. Some form of mark making. Traditionally it would be a fountain pen or a fine liner, some watercolours, and I would go for a medium round brush, something like this. This is a number 6. And that will do you for most things. You can, if you're feeling particularly bold, something like a mop brush. These are excellent. You can get some very small ones. These are you can hold absolutely loads of water. Good for big washes. And then maybe something a little bit smaller, a small round brush for some detailed work. But I would say something like this. I mean, this is a number 6. This would be perfect to get you going. You don't necessarily. It's not necessarily about doing loads of fine detail stuff. Often, what you want to do is put on a couple of washes of colour and just splash some colour on there and just get something exciting happening. Sketchbook, brush, paint, mark maker. We're going to do a couple of different demos of this Lighthouse. I don't know whether you can see that. We're going to do one with water soluble ink and fountain pen just to show you the most simple way you can start. We're going to do one with a more minimal colour where we just paint the sky, and then we leave the lighthouse as it is, and then we're going to do one where we sort of paint it all in. So there's 3 different super fast demos. I reckon maybe 20 minutes we can do this. Let's go. Really like that. Now I'm looking at the tablet, and within that frame I know about a third of the way up is the rocks, and about 2/3 of the way across is the lighthouse. So that's splitting the page up into thirds, and that goes up to about there and about there. So I'm just going to do that as an initial, that's as much detail as I'm going to put in. So here we're going to go in with the fountain pen, and I'm going to start. I like to do something called a continuous line type technique where I keep the nib of the fountain pen on the page as much as possible. Unfortunately, it does involve a little bit of concentration, so occasionally my speech fails and I go quiet. But anyway, c'est la vie. Now to the lighthouse itself. So now this, about that first thing is about halfway up, and it does have a little bit of curve in it, but as you get further up, see I've made a mistake here, but because we're all here to learn, it doesn't matter. What I've done is I've made this light a slightly different shape to what it is, and I'm going to put a bit more curl, a bit more bend in that one to accentuate the height of it somewhat. There's nothing wrong with telling a few porcupines, and likewise with that. Perspective in there, so I'm going to choose a brush, any old brush here, and I'm going to get a little bit of water. Now, as I said before, this is very much the sort of minimum line and wash you could do. With a dry brush, a couple of stripes here, like this. And you see the effect that's having? Just adding a little bit of texture. Now, important thing is to let that dry and then put a little bit of line work on afterwards. But I think that's quite good fun. So, I'm going to do the same thing again here on this side. But what I'm going to use this time is my trusty Opus 88 fountain pen, which I use a lot. And I'm going to do the same sketch pretty much. Now what I could do with this is go back and put some thicker lines around the outside of various elements to bring them forward or backwards, but I'm not going to do that in this case because I want to keep things super simple. So for my final version, I'm going to do the same thing again, but just to mix it up a little bit, I'm going to sketch with a slightly different pen. So for this one, I'm going to be using the Food Nib pen, which is a fountain pen with a slightly curved end. And I'm just going to basically quickly do the same version again. We've got our fast thick version, we've got our more sort of controlled version, and then we've got this, which was the original ink one that I did. Now that's still wet, so what I might do is, actually no, I'm going to hairdry that, because then I can get that one finished. Okay, so now this one's dried up a little bit, I'm going to actually just add in some bits that I think might help tell the story. So I'm going to put in some shadow down this side, some shadow down this side, and some... I'm going to use a hairdryer actually, I'm going to dry it with a hairdryer. Right, so the final touches on this lighthouse that I did is reinstate some of these details that have got lost. So we'll go across there, we'll add in that railing again. Okay, add in this bit here and these gussets. Does that word sound so dirty? And one of the nice features up here is this filled in area, so I'm going to actually add that in, add that back in. So it just brings a bit more structure back into it. There we go. So I'd say that's done. Now what you could do is you could reinstate some of these rocks here. That probably would make sense, wouldn't it? And I would probably just thicken some of these lines up here, maybe a little bit as well. There we go. And of course you should always sign your work, why not? So there's that one, which is the super simple ink, no watercolor. That is literally just water soluble ink, brush and water. Now this one, let's get some watercolor on the go for this one. So for this one, I'm going to do something equally similar, or equally simple. So I am going to paint the sky with water. Now it may seem like I've lost my tiny mind, but you'll see why I'm doing this in a second. So again, using this number 6 round brush, quite simple, just one brush for this. This is a relatively easy technique. There we go, that looks like it's covered quite nicely. So I'm going to take some, now you could take any colour here, you could take pink, whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, the reason why you're putting a sky in is just to create some separation between the elements. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the French ultramarine, which is one of my favourite colours, and I'm going to just dab some there. Let's see where it goes. There we go. You could really get some quite strong pigment. Now what this is going to do is this is just going to spread out and do its own thing. Now you can also get some on a brush here and just dot a bit on there, put a bit more on up here. You can do a suggestion of some cloud details like that. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get a little bit of Van Dyke brown and I'm going to add that in here. Here we go, and I could dilute that down a tiny bit. Okay. So now I could add in colour of the lighthouse, I could add in some colours of the rock, but I'm not gonna, I'm just gonna leave it just like that. I'm gonna leave it like that. I like a minimal sketch sometimes. I am gonna put a tiny little extra bit of detail in there because I quite like quite like that, because I think that really just somehow add to the story. Don't know why, it's just been bugging me. Right, so there you go. One ink, really simple sky, just leaving the whole of this uncoloured. So this is a very minimal approach, and then I'm going to not do a maximal approach here because I don't want to overcomplicate things at this initial stage of our play. But I'm going to do something which is a bit more akin to a sort of traditional line and wash. So the first thing I'm going to do here is use a bit of this sienna and maybe a little bit of what I've got mixed here, which is a bit of grey. Again, a bit of sienna. I'm going to be dabbing it in pieces. Now sometimes there's a temptation to do a flat wash where you cover everything, but I think initially when you're learning I would try not to be too fussy about covering everything in one go. You really don't have to. You can be quite rough and quite sort of gestural with it, again, quite sketchy. So I'm going to put in a little bit of this sienna just in there like that. Now for the grey area towards the back here, you could actually use a bit of this green and a little bit of this. I don't know what that is that cerulean blue? So because this is all one colour, I might actually make a bit more of an effort to paint that one in a bit more consistently, if you know what I mean. So there's that. And now under here we've got some grey, because that's in shadow, isn't it, there? More pigment in. Obviously we've got grey there, but I'll go back and do that in a sec. So with that one, this probably should be dry before you do the sky. I mean, normally it may be that I'd put the sky in here first, but obviously I haven't in this case. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to dab a little bit of that out, because I don't want it to go too dark. So I'm just going to really quickly hair dry that now, so that I can put that sky in. Now I like quite big daft skies. I always have liked doing skies. It's one of my favourite bits of watercolour. So I'm going to do the same as I did before and just put a lot of water in here. And then I'm going to get some of my you see how that's just messing about there? Again, not being too precious and just having a bit of a play like that. And again, I might put a few little affectations in. I quite like a few spots be like that. And then you need to colour that bit in, don't you? Because otherwise you won't know it's a see-through bit of the lighthouse. There we go. So for the green that I did before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of blue in there with that green. Shadow colours tend to be bluer, or they're a different, not always, but. And then because I want to try and show a bit of form, I'm going to put a little bit of shadow down this side here. There we go. And do the same on the white bit. Do the same on the white bit with the. There you go. And then put a little bit more shadow down here too. Now there's going to be some shadows in these rocks, so I'm going to use a bit of the Van Dyke brown, a little bit of the French ultramarine, and I'm going to just put in some dots. Again, really not being too precious here. Keep it really rough and ready and fun, and a bit of life about it. And there's a bit of a shadow here coming forward. Right, now in this bottom area I would put a few more spots and dots because there's a lot more texture down here, like that. Right, so now there's one thing I need to do, is put that little bit of black in the top, but apart from that I think that's pretty much done. One piece done, that's kind of all the areas are coloured, of Philip Deuce's Lighthouse, and then we have this and then the second one where we've got just the sky done with a bit of different colours, and then this one is literally gone in, it's just one pen. So the first one is the fountain pen with the water soluble ink, and these are obviously waterproof ink with some watercolour on top. So next episode is going to be all about the line work, and I hope you can join me for that one. There will be a link up there somewhere. So if you appreciate any of the content on this channel or you get anything from it, please feel free to buy me a coffee or have a look at my website where I've got some original artwork for sale, and subscribe and like, that always helps the channel. So hopefully I'll see you on episode 3 of this line and wash series, and remember, no perfection, just play. If you're going to be practicing this technique, I want you to clear your mind, don't worry about mistakes, just have a bit of a play. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's all about relaxing and having a bit of time for you to just create something with no pressure. So give yourself that gift, give yourself that space, and I'll see you next time. Cheers then, bye bye.